Alrighty then. Get my earbuds in here. Okay. Sorry about that. Whoa. All right, here we go. So we're live right now. Shalom, everyone. I'm Brother Doug with my sister Josie. We are part of the Awakened by Yahuwah Fellowship Group in Yahuwah Almighty and Yahushua Messiah. So today, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be continuing our Torah readings, and we're going to go to Leviticus here. So we'll be reading from Leviticus 11 here. And you know what I actually want to do? Hold on a second. I actually want to do a comparison. I'm kind of curious because sometimes the names of the animals and the insects and stuff differ in different versions. So I want to get my Septuagint and Targums side by side here on a parallel. So just in case. So hold on a second. Let it load up here. Okay. Alrighty then. Okay, so we're going to go to Leviticus 11. All right, here we go. So I'll be using the Word software. This is a free software you can find online. If anyone would like to know how to get it, guys, at a later time, want to know how to get it. All right, so this needs to. Okay, I don't know why two of them popped up. All right, there we go. Finally. All right, Leviticus 11. And we have the Targum on the right, Septuagint on the left, okay? And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and Aaron, saying, Speak ye to the sons of Yasharal, saying, These are the beasts which you shall eat of all the beasts that are upon the earth. So for those that want to say that we were never ever supposed to eat that, we were always supposed to eat the original diet, you would literally have to ignore this whole chapter of the Torah. You would literally have to ignore this whole chapter if you are saying that we were never supposed to eat meat and that eating meat is a sin. And by the way, not to go on a tangent, but that's unscriptural, actually Gnostic doctrine to believe that you can only eat vegetables. So anyway, so every beast parting the hoof and making the division of the two claws and chewing the cud among the beasts, these you shall eat. Everyone that parts the soul and divides the paw or hoof, and that brings up the cud among the cattle, that you may eat. Okay. So again, you have parting the hoof and the division of the claws. Okay, and choose the cud. So those are the two requirements for the clean land animals right here. Okay. But of these, you shall not eat of those that chew the cud, and of those that part the hoofs and divide the claws. The camel, because it chews the cud but does not divide the hoof, this is unclean to you. So it doesn't have both. And that's why the camel would be unclean. Okay. The rabbit, because it chews the cud but does not divide the hoof, this is unclean to you. Okay. And the hare, because it does not chew the cud and does not divide the hoof, this is unclean to you. Okay, that's kind of interesting. I wonder if the hare. I always thought the hare is a rabbit, but I guess a hare is technically different. It's interesting. Okay, the swine. We know this right here. The pig, swine, pork, because this divides the hoof and makes claws of the hoof and does not chew the cud, is unclean to you. You shall not eat of their flesh, and you shall not touch their carcasses. So all these unclean animals so far that we've referenced, we are not to even touch their carcasses. That is a commandment. These are unclean to you. So it's not just, you're ceremoniously unclean at evening. No, you're commanded not to touch their dead bodies at all. Okay. These are what you shall eat of all that are in the waters. So now we're going to the stuff that's in the sea, like the fish. Okay. All things that have fins and scales in the waters and in the seas and in the brooks, these you shall eat. Okay. Self-explanatory there. Okay. Skins and skins, fins and scales right there. Okay. All the things which have not fins or scales in the water or in the seas and in the brooks, of all which the waters produce, and of every soul living in the water are an abomination. They shall be abominations to you. So anything that doesn't have scales and fins, we are not supposed to eat. Okay. Now, what's interesting is that Donkelos says reptile of the waters. Interesting. So this probably could be referring to even alligators and stuff like that, which is kind of interesting. It's a little more literal in the Donkelos. It kind of gives you more of an idea. So that's interesting. You shall not eat of their flesh, and you shall abhor their carcasses. Okay, if you hate something's dead body, you're not going to touch it. Okay, so again, it's being reiterated here. Okay, to abhor their carcasses, not to touch their carcasses. Okay, in verse 11 there. And all the things that have not fins or scales of those that are in the waters, these are an abomination to you. Okay. All right. Okay, now we're up to verse 13. And these are the things which you shall abhor of birds, and they shall not be eaten. They are an abomination, the eagle and the ostrich and the sea eagle. Okay, so the Targum has eagle, osprey, sea eagle. Okay, well, they're birds of prey. That makes sense. Okay, the vulture, the kite, and the like to it. Okay, and the sparrow and the owl and the sea mew and the like to it. Okay, so let's see here. We got raven on the Onkelos side. That would make sense also. Okay, but there's no mention of the sea mew on the Onkelos. That's kind of interesting. Or the sparrow. That's kind of interesting. Very interesting. Might have to look more into that. Okay. And every raven and birds like it, and the hawk and his like, and the ostrich and the night bird, and the gull and the hawk after his kind, and the night raven and the cormorant and the stork, and the owl and the diver for fish, and the ibis, and the red bill and the pelican and swan. Okay, and the swan and the green bird and the stork. Okay. All right. The heron, the lapwing, and like to it, and hoopoe and the bat. Okay, so the Kalos there has the pika. after his kind, and the moorcock and the bat. I have no idea what a moorcock is. I would have to look that up. And all the winged creatures that creep, which go upon 4 feet, so like on all fours, are abominations to you. Every winged thing that creeps or walks upon fours is an abomination to you. Okay, so that's same thing there. Okay. But these you shall eat of the creeping winged animals that go upon 4 feet, which have legs above their feet to leap upon the earth. So there's a difference. Like the ones that would be clean of the winged insects are ones that have wings above their 4 legs. So that would make them hop like grasshoppers, you know? Okay. Yet these you may eat of every creeping thing that flies, that walks upon 4s, which has joints above its feet, wherewith to leap upon the ground. And these of them you shall eat, the caterpillar and his like, and the Attacus and his like, and the Cantharus and his like, and the locust and his like. Okay, so interesting. Caleb says, of such as these you may eat, the locust after his kind, the bald locust, and the serpent killer and his after his kind, and the grasshopper after his kind. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know what this is referring to, the serpent killer, and that's a very vague reference of an insect, so I would have to look that up. What that exactly is referring to. It might be referring to a special type of locust or a special type of hopping insect. I don't know. Okay. Every creeping thing from among the birds which has 4 feet is an abomination to you. And by these you shall be defiled. Everyone that touches their carcasses shall be unclean till evening. So you could say that this type of uncleanness is a sinful and ceremonial uncleanness. It's both. You will be unclean till evening, but it's also a commandment not to touch their carcasses. So it would be sin if you touch their carcasses, and you would have to repent. According to verse 8, and that literally says not to touch carcasses of these unclean animals. And verse 11 seems to include even every unclean living thing, not just land animals, but actually unclean fish. It says that you would abhor their carcasses. They are abominations. Okay. And everyone that takes of their dead body shall wash his garments and shall be unclean till evening. Okay. All right. So you gotta, if you by mistake touch these carcasses of the unclean living things, you are to wash your clothes and you shall be unclean of evening. Okay. Whichever among the beasts divides the hoof and makes the claws and does not chew the cud shall be unclean to you. Everyone that touches their dead bodies shall be unclean till evening. Okay. And everyone among all the beasts that move upon its 4 feet, which goes on all 4, is unclean to you. Everyone that touches their dead body shall be unclean till evening. And he that takes of their dead body shall wash his garments and shall be unclean till evening. These are unclean to you. Oh, come on. I swear this stupid thing doesn't want to move half the time. All right, so he that takes a row shall be unclean to you. And these are unclean to you of the reptiles upon the earth, the weasel, the mouse, and the lizard. Okay. And you got the weasel, mouse, crocodile after his kind. I like how it mentions the crocodile on the Uncalo's side, which would make sense. Okay. All right, so we got, let's see here. We got the ferret, the chameleon, the evet, the newt, the moat. Okay, lizard, chameleon, field mouse. Okay. These are unclean to you of all the reptiles which are on the earth. Everyone who touches their carcasses shall be unclean till evening. And whatsoever one of their dead bodies shall fall, it shall be unclean, whether wooden vessel or garment or skin or sack it may be. Every vessel in which work should be done shall be dipped in water and shall be unclean till evening. It shall be clean. Okay. Okay, so wooden vessel you can clean. It'll be clean. It will be unclean till evening. Raiment and skin and sack you can all put in water. It'll be unclean until evening. But you'll see here, there's a difference once we get to verse 33 here with the clay, anything that's made of clay. And every earthen vessel into which one of these shall fall, whatsoever is inside it shall be unclean, it shall be broken. So whatever earthen vessel, clay vessel, into which any of them may fall, all that is within it is polluted, and you shall break it. Okay. And all food that is eaten on which water shall come shall be unclean. Every beverage which is drunken in any vessel shall be unclean. Okay. And everything on which there shall fall of their dead bodies shall be unclean. Ovens and stands for jars shall be broken down, obviously. And this is something that I really had to look into, and I had to understand why would they be broken down. Now, obviously we have the two verses before this, right? We know that it says every earthen vessel, right? Well, the original ovens were actually clay ovens. They were called fire pots. Okay, when you look at the original Hebrew word here for oven in the Masoretic text, is actually talking about a fire pot. Same thing with cooking pans. They shall be broken. They are unclean. They shall be unclean to you. Okay. The reason I say this is because two verses beforehand, we're seeing that there's a distinction between wood is okay. Obviously metal would be okay. There's nothing wrong with that metal wouldn't be at evening. It wouldn't be there wouldn't be a problem with it being clean again. Okay. And then you see here right here it says whatever earthen vessel. Okay. So the context, we still got to keep that context, right, of verse 33 when we're looking at stuff like cooking pans. You got to understand, back in the day, they did not have, and really you got to think about it, when did we start really having metal frying pans or aluminum frying pans? They obviously didn't have that back then. So again, the oven is actually a fire pot, which was completely made out of earth and clay, okay, which makes total sense of verse 33. And I would assume that the cooking pans and the vessels they cooked with were made out of clay also. That's what would make sense in verse 35. They shall be broken. They are unclean and shall be unclean to you. Nevertheless, a fountain or a pit into which the place of a collection of waters into which they may have fallen shall be unclean, but he who touches their dead bodies shall be unclean. Okay? And if one of their carcasses shall fall upon any sowing seed which shall be sown, it shall be unclean. Okay, so that's referring to when you're, actually, this is all about farming in verse 37. And, you got to worry about if you're sowing seed to yield crops and stuff like that, and fruits and stuff like that, and vegetables. But if the water be poured on any seed and one of their dead bodies shall fall upon it, it is unclean to you. And if one of the cattle die, which is lawful for you to eat, he that touches their carcass shall be unclean till evening. So This is actually referring to a ceremonial uncleanness in verse 39, and is talking about, basically it's talking about if a cow or a lawful clean animal actually goes dies of itself, that you, if you touch a clean animal that dies of itself, you would be ceremoniously unclean till evening, but that has nothing to do with sin. You would be unclean until evening. So there's a difference between that and touching the dead body of swine or something that's actually we're told not to do. So there's a difference there. And he that eats of their carcasses shall wash his garments and be unclean till evening. He that carries off their carcasses shall wash his garments and bathe himself in water and be unclean till evening. Okay. So again, that's a ceremoniously uncleanness. And every reptile that creeps on the earth, this shall be an abomination to you. It shall not be eaten. Okay, that's self-explanatory. And every animal that creeps on its belly, and everyone that goes on fours continually, which abounds with feet among all reptiles creeping upon the earth, you shall not eat it, for it is abomination to you. So animals that creep on their bellies, that would have a lot to do with reptiles, obviously. Okay. And you shall not defile your souls with any of the reptiles that creep upon the earth, and you shall not be polluted with them, and you shall not be unclean by them. So obviously the unclean animals, we're not supposed to go anywhere near them. Okay. For I am Yahuwah, and you shall be set apart. You shall be set apart, because I, Yahuwah, your Elohim, am set apart. You shall not defile your souls with any of the reptiles creeping upon the earth. For I am Yahuwah, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your Elohim, and you shall be set apart. For I, Yahuwah, am set apart. Okay. This is the law concerning the beasts, birds, and every living creature moving in the water, and every living creature creeping on the earth, to distinguish between unclean and clean, and between those bringing forth alive, such as should be eaten, and those that bring forth alive, that should not be eaten. Okay, so that's pretty much self-explanatory. Like I said, we're finally getting to the part of Leviticus where we can actually fully fulfill this stuff here, this whole chapter. Obviously, we can fully keep. It's not depending on a priesthood, you could say. It doesn't matter. Either way, you can fully keep it. And I know there's going to be some assertions like, well, didn't Yahusha say, that, in Matthew that all foods are clean? And I'm going to show you guys how absurd that would be. That he would say it, that Yahusha would say that when he himself knows that the day he returns, he will be destroying those that actually are eating such things. So again, I want to show you a place in Isaiah in a millennial context, mind you. And here we go. Isaiah 66:17. And they that set apart themselves and purify themselves in the gardens and eat swine's flesh in the porches and the abominations in the mouth shall be consumed together, says Yahuwah. So for those of us that believe Yahusha is Yahuwah, it would be absurd that he is going to tell you in one place, oh, by the way, don't worry about it. You can eat whatever you want. And then he's going to destroy those on the day of his wrath. Doesn't even make any logical sense. So I would really ask you to consider that. Also, Paul himself says, do not touch the unclean thing in his own letters. And I can bring that one up. Let's see here. Okay, let me just bring that one up. Do not touch the unclean thing. All right, so that's 2 Corinthians 6:17. And so 2 Corinthians 6:17. All right, here we go. It says, "Wherefore come out from among them and be ye separate, says Yahuwah, and touch not the unclean thing, and I will receive you." Obviously, Paul is referencing Leviticus 11. He's actually saying to his audience, do not touch carcasses of unclean animals. He's referencing what we just read about in his own letters. So again, I would say before we come to a conclusion, just because our English translators decide to add in, by this he made all foods clean, before you go trusting an NIV translator, you might want to do some studying into this. Okay. And by the way, most of the older translations do not have that phrase in there. That was completely added in by the translator. It actually, in the original, it would say, "Thus purging all meats," which would refer to him actually showing that it's not eating with unwashed hands doesn't make you defiled, because whatever goes into your mouth is being purged by your colon, by your gut, and then it comes out the other end. So that's what he's really talking about, is eating with unwashed hands, number one. And we could go to that scripture here. Thus purging all foods. Okay, so that would be Mark 7:19. Okay, so Mark 7:19, we can go to that real quick. Just want to show here that this is still valid in the New Testament, and that Yahushua did not do away with the laws of uncleanness. Okay, if we look at the context here and we start off, let's see here. Okay. All right. We'll start with verse 14 here. "And when he had called all the people unto him, he said unto them, Hearken unto me, every one of you, and understand. There is nothing without a man that enters into him can defile him, but the things that come out of him, those that are they that defile a man. If any man has ears to hear, let him hear. And when he was entered into the house from the people, his disciples asked him concerning the parable, and he said unto them, Are you so without understanding also? Do you not perceive that whatsoever thing from without enters into a man, it cannot defile him, because it enters not into his heart, but into the belly, and goes out into the draught, purging all meats." Okay? But what you got to understand is there's a context that most of us miss, is that Yahushua's disciples were being reprimanded by the Pharisees for eating with unwashed hands. So when we're reading this in Mark 7, we got to look at the context. Okay? The context is that Yahushua is dealing with Pharisees that have traditions of men, and he's actually rebuking the Pharisees, telling them, it doesn't defile you that you're eating food with unwashed hands, and that unwashed hands is, literally being put in your mouth. That doesn't defile you. It's what comes out of the heart, what it comes out of, your words defile you, your actions defile you. So that's what he's actually talking about. It has nothing to do with whether we can, he's not saying we can eat pork. He's not saying we can eat reptiles or dogs or anything. He would, so another thing to mention too is the word meats. Okay. Let's see here. If we go to, I want to go to the ABP here, see if we can get the actual word for meats here. Foods. What do you know? And this is something that most people don't realize either. The word it's the same word that Paul uses in the letter to Timothy, okay? It's the same Greek word, all right? Broma, right? Okay? That which is eaten. Okay, according to the Israelites, lobster's not eaten. Pigs are not eaten, okay? Crawfish are not eaten. Catfish are not eaten, okay? So whatever would be food to them, okay? Which obviously would not include, and actually the Strong's Concordance lets us know that's the context of this word, okay? Especially articles allowed or forbidden by Judean law. What do you know? Okay. We got to take that context when we're reading stuff like Mark 7:19, okay? This has nothing to do with saying we can now eat pig. Okay. Matter of fact, he's not saying that in this context. And so there's no verse in even the New Testament you can get that it's okay now to eat pork. Okay. All right. Or any other unclean animal that you would desire to eat, that you say it's okay to eat because of the book of Mark or the book of Matthew. Okay. So anyway, so I just wanted to point that out. So anyway, thank you for joining us. I pray this message was a baraka to you guys, and to show anyone that's listening that maybe is not convinced that we need to go by the dietary instructions. We definitely need to still be going by the dietary instructions, and that they're not done away with. I pray that if that's the only thing you got from Leviticus 11, I pray that you at least were led to start obeying the Father's commandments. Those that are Christians that are watching, or people that are still debating in their minds whether this is still valid for today. So I thank you for joining us. And anyone looking for fellowship, like I always say, please reach out. Please contact any one of us in the fellowship. Thank you for joining us. Shalom. All right.